Welcome to part 2. First part covered the law and terms and parental orders and agreed expenses and stuff like that. This part will cover pre-pregnancy expenses, transfer fees, incentive fees, stuff like that, checks and agreements. And it's a little bit more personal in a sense of Auntie Lisa face. Sorry about that, but I've been hanging around in surrogacy world for a very, very, very long time. Again, loads of information, big arms, loads of information in the description box below. Any comments, questions, queries or anything, do comment below the information box. Description box, it's called description box. Or contact me on Facebook and all that lot. All the good information is below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I try and be nice like that. So basically looking at things such as pre-pregnancy expenses, they're relatively vast but not huge, not like expenses in pregnancy. You have got different kinds of expenses. Now if you're a TS, the expense is going to be a lot lower. The INSEM fee should be once a month, regardless of whether you do 1 or 20 INSEMs. It's one fee. People should not take advantage of this, and it's usually around £50. This means that if you're doing insems of an evening, or the surrogate is travelling to a travel-in or a hotel to do inseminations, or you're doing in-house and they want to feed the kids quick, get a takeout or something, throw the kids in bed, because there's certain things that IS have to do insems that, let's be honest, you don't really want the kids to be around. That kind of covers that. With a transfer fee, it's slightly more advanced because you might have lunch because you'll be going out, or take out when the surrogate is having rest after a transfer. Now, you don't necessarily have to go on bed rest, but convenience food and stuff like that means that you can just chill a little bit more. You don't have to be up and cooking and getting stressed. The other expenses with that for pre-pregnancy, even before transfer, is fuel, parking, childcare, loss of earnings for all the clinic appointments. Also, again, similar with transfer and after transfer, if any of those things are involved, they should all be covered and they are separate to a transfer fee. That's pretty much just to cover convenience food, I think, and anything like that. The next thing to cover is the checks. Now, dear God, do not cut corners. There are horror stories into the papers. Even though there's only been like 4 bad women out of 3,000 good surrogacy births. The 3,000 good surrogacy births are mundane and boring and no one sells a story about those usually. So everyone just hears about the bad stuff. And a lot of the time, this stuff can be avoided. Now, people that say they're surrogates and just do INSEM, supposedly, and never get pregnant and then end the match, blah, blah, blah. They're not really surrogates. They're con artists pretending. So don't label every surrogate as bad because of the bad stories. It's not what it is. It's such a small minority. But you can avoid a lot of heartache by going around and going through things correctly. Don't cut corners. I cannot say that enough to people. IPs, I know it's expensive. I know it sucks that you have to use a surrogate. I know it's not fair. I do, and I'm not saying that in a smarmy way. I genuinely know. But this is your life. This is your dream. This is your money on the line. Save yourself, like massive amount of heartache even, just by doing things properly. Get medical checks for you, your partner, surrogate, their partner. Everyone needs to be checked medically to make sure they're not a walking feral of disease, okay? Next one, criminal checks. If anyone's been selling babies or beating kids up or animals or fraud, run away. That's not a good sign. And that's both ways, surrogate or IP. Make sure you do a criminal check. People that abuse kids or have their children taken into care and stuff cannot do surrogacy. Again, either which way around. If you've got a surrogate that's involved with social services, or you've got IPs that have been involved with social services in the past and lost children, none of these people should be doing surrogacy. Just no. Next, huge one, psych evaluation. I don't give a monkey's butt if your agency doesn't do one and says you don't need one. Or if you do independent and you're doing TS and you don't have to do it. Blooming well do it, people. For goodness sake, there are so many IPs out there that are not stable. I've heard stories of IPs that have basically cried at every scan as soon as the doctors or sonographers started to talk to the surrogate, went on about all the losses, didn't pay their surrogate's expenses, were just complete bat crazy people because they are not mentally stable for surrogacy already. Surrogates that would, have issues. Don't risk it. Get a psych evaluation. It's not that much money really, and the amount of heartache it could save you is immense. Don't cut corners. If I haven't said that enough, don't cut corners. Get the noggins checked out. Make sure people are not completely mental. I mean, clearly I'm a bit mental, but I'm mental in a good way. And I've been a surrogate twice and haven't stolen anyone's baby or lied or got money for anything fun ever. I'm almost sad about that one. I'd love a holiday to Florida, but you know, whatever. Don't cut corners. Have I said that enough? Did anyone want to tell me how many times I said don't cut corners? I think it would be about 8 by now. Agreements. They are not legally binding in the UK. There are templates you can use as an independent surrogate or independent IP, whatever, that cover pretty much everything. You can add in stipulations, you can change things. It's great. None of them are legally binding. They cannot be drawn up by a solicitor unless the solicitor is doing it through the good of their heart and isn't going to charge you a penny. You want to make sure everyone's on the same page. As I said, getting to know you, period, should be a minimum of 3 months. Don't jump and be like, oh, I've known you for 2 days. Let's match and make a baby. I don't care how much you click, how cute it is. Don't be a fool. Seriously, don't be a fool. Take your time. Discuss everything. Make sure the expenses can be paid. They are non-negotiable. If an IP can't afford your expenses, it's horrible, it's sad, it's heartbreaking, but it is what it is. Move on. Don't screw your kids over because you've been told a sob story or whatever. Even if the IPs aren't doing it to like guilt you in any way, just don't do it. Just don't do it. Everyone needs to be on the same page. Everyone needs to agree. Everyone needs to know where they stand. What contact do you want when you were pregnant? Do they want to be at every appointment? Can you deal with them being at every appointment? When you're in labour, do you want the IPs in the room, or would you rather do it like privately with you and your partner or whatever? And then hand the baby over. IPs, are you okay missing the birth of your child? Even if it's all agreed that you can be there, are you able to be? What happens if the surrogate goes into labour and has a baby really, really quickly? The local hospital, are they going to allow you to be in there? Can you stay with the baby? Can you not? Is there another hospital you can go to? These are all things you need to check. Are you going to be okay with things if you're not allowed to stay? Would the surrogate be willing to have a home birth if the hospital is not surrogacy friendly? Loss. Would you want an extra expense if you did lose pregnancy? Now, there are extra expenses that are covered in agreements. This is a C-section. Obviously, if you know you're going to have a C-section, it's just in with your normal expenses. But an emergency C-section, loss of tubes, a hysterectomy, loss of fertility, ectopic pregnancies, all of these have extra things. What do you want for those? What would you need to cover that for counselling or extra help, loss of earnings, childcare? Again, all come into this. What ones do you want covered? Would you want a miscarriage thing? Would you only want it if you ended up having to go into hospital to get it confirmed? If you just had normal miscarriage at home, would you not want anything? I personally didn't take a miscarriage payment and I wrote them out because I didn't feel comfortable with it. Termination. Would you terminate? When would you terminate? Why would you terminate? Would you terminate up to 12 weeks? Or would you go up to 20 weeks for medical reasons? Would you terminate Down syndrome? Would you want testing for Down syndrome? Would you agree with religious ideals in a pregnancy? Are your IPs Muslim? Would they rather you didn't eat pork? Are you okay with that? Would they circumcise the baby or shave their head because of the whole charity weight of gold thing that Muslims have? Would you be against that? Is that something you're comfortable with? In the UK, you have to agree, you have to be on the same page. Once you've done the baby, your job is to, carry a baby, give birth and hand it over. But there's no point having an uncomfortable pregnancy because you disagree with things. Work it all out. Would you mind dyeing? Do you want to dye your hair when you're pregnant? Would your IPs be all right with that? It's not legally binding here. You can't get sued if you break contract. There is no contract. So make sure you agree with pretty much everything that you can think of. Be careful here. Don't think, oh, well, it won't happen to me, so I won't worry about it. No, it might happen to you. Do worry about it. Do think about it. When you're doing GS, do you transfer 1 or 2? Would you be willing to have twins? Would you have 3 transfer because they push for it? What happens if the egg splits or the embryo splits and you end up with twins or triplets? Would you want to do a reduction? Is that something you would be able to face? Is it not? Would the IPs agree with you on the off chance it split into 4 or 3? It's happened. Someone I know had a transfer of 2 embryos, 1 split into identical triplets and 1 stayed a singleton. Would you do a reduction? Would you not? Would your IPs be okay with it? You can't then go, well, I agreed to this, but actually, do you know what, I changed my mind. I mean, legally you can because the surrogate's got all the rights in the pregnancy, but it's not worth the hassle. You need to discuss all of this stuff first. Being in groups on Facebook is a huge help. I cannot recommend it enough. And as I said, I'll put the link below for Surrogacy UK, the FOIA, or UK Surrogacy, the FOIA. I forget what it's called. I named it, but I forget what it's called. But that pretty much covers everything. Are there going to be religious things or dietary issues? What do you do What do you want to do? What don't you want to do? Make sure you discuss everything. It's hugely, hugely important. But that pretty much brings me to the end of everything I wanted to go over, which is like half an hour worth of my face talking. So I can only apologise for that. But as I said, if you've got any questions, queries, comments, arguments, issues, or whatever, do contact me below or in private, whatever works for you. I'll have loads of links everywhere below, as I said. I hope this has been of help, and I apologise if I've said things backwards or wrong or whatever, or offended anyone. I hope not. Anyway, right, I will speak to you all later. Take care. Bye.